But first, my Pittsburgh Steelers got a big one, folks. They beat the Cleveland Browns 26-22, and it still feels weird to say Acrisure Stadium. It should still be Heinz Field, but whatever. Got the W against the Cleveland Browns 26-22. It was led by, unquestionably, the defense. TJ Watt was spectacular, had a sack, had a fumble recovered for a touchdown. TJ also, by the way, became the Steelers' all-time sack leader. Alex Highsmith had a massive game. He had a pick six on the first play from scrimmage to get the scoring started, and was the one who forced the fumble for TJ Watt to pick it up and return to the end zone for what ended up essentially being the game-winning touchdown with about 5 minutes and change to go. So, initial takeaways from Pittsburgh. This shows me at least one of two things. I guess we'll find out as time goes on. That either last week against San Francisco defensively was a complete fluke, or San Francisco is just ridiculously good offensively. And some of this, of course, Pittsburgh's defensive, their great performance on the defensive side of the football is in part due to the fact that Cleveland's offense is... it leaves a lot to be desired given the quarterback play. Again, more on Deshaun in the second segment. But when you have a guy in TJ Watt who I believe by the slightest of margins, and of course it's a legitimate argument, by the slightest of margins is the best defensive player in football over Micah Parsons. Personally, I think it's those two guys, and it's everybody else with respect to Bosa, Myles Garrett, Sauce Gardner, everybody in the NFL. Fred Warner, they're not in the same class as these two guys. These guys literally can change outcomes of games sometimes, and that's exactly what TJ Watt did with that touchdown there at the end. So, Pittsburgh's defense, it's a Mike Tomlin-led defense. It was Monday Night Football. Crowd was amped. It was awesome. I expected them to kind of bounce back from that performance. I had them holding Cleveland to 22, so I ended up being dead on the money on that one. I said that Pittsburgh would win 24-22, so spot on accurate about the Cleveland Browns. But, again... there is jubilation and victory, as there should be. It's the NFL. Every win that you get, I don't care who you're playing, is hard. Some mean more than others, of course, whether it's a rivalry game, whether you upset somebody, whether if you're a contender, you're playing a team that's also contending, kind of like a prove it to yourself and prove it to the league type of situation there. Pittsburgh in this type of deal was playing a division rival, got the job done, led by the defense. But I still come back to, and you got to find good aspects of losses and bad aspects to wins. Not saying there's good losses or bad wins, because I don't believe in either. However, you got to look at the not necessarily the tape or what have you, but look at what got you to this point. This Pittsburgh Steelers offense, ladies and gentlemen, is truly atrocious. Not the offensive personnel, although the offensive line leaves some to be desired, but I knew that going into the season. Kenny Pickett did miss some throws. That pick that he threw to the nickel corner first quarter was as bad of a pick as I've seen this NFL season. Just not as bad as the ones Josh Allen threw last week, but just a bad pick. Just flat out didn't see the guy right there. And Cleveland ended up getting. I think Cleveland ended up getting points of drive. I don't think they did. Now that I think about it, the point is Kenny Pickett didn't play terribly well. But this all stems back to one individual, and it's driving me crazy to continue to have to say this. Matt Canada's not the guy in Pittsburgh. He's not. One could say, well, come on, Bryson. He's playing the San Francisco 49ers defense, which has Pro Bowlers everywhere. And the Cleveland Browns defense, which has Myles Garrett and that has Zadarius Smith, has all kinds of playmakers on their defense. So I wasn't aware, apparently, that that's the only two teams the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever played with Matt Canada offensive coordinator. Let's look at the stats here real quick, because I think they tell the story. Matt Canada took over as the Steelers OC in 2021 through 37 games. Here's what the Steelers rank on offense. They are 26th in points per game, 26th in yards per game, 31st in yards per play, 29th in big plays, 31st in offensive touchdowns, 10. They finally got a 20-point game in regulation, but that was because of the freaking defense getting 2 touchdowns, so I should almost put an asterisk next to that one. 2 20-point games in regulations. 10 20-point games in regulation, 2 30-point games in regulation, and 0 400-yard games. Every other team in the NFL, every other team has a minimum of 3 400-yard games since the start of the 2021 season. Pittsburgh has yet to have their first. It is not a talent problem in Pittsburgh. Listen, I don't know if Kenny Pickett's the guy. Liked him. I said coming into this season, I thought he could have a breakout year, have about 28 touchdown passes, have a passer rating in like the mid-90s, have a really good season, help Pittsburgh get to the playoffs with the help, obviously, of that incredible defense. Probably won't be that good, albeit we're 2 games in and anything can happen. But am I supposed to believe that Kenny Pickett, who finished last season very well, had a big-time game against these same Cleveland Browns in Week 18 in Pittsburgh, are you supposed to tell me that a guy who's a first-round pick, finished the year great, is all of a sudden terrible? Like, I have a hard time believing the guy he's just no good. Same coaching staff, and he's just terrible. No, he's not being developed. That's the difference between Kenny Pickett and Brock Purdy, albeit I like Purdy more, always have. But Brock Purdy's got Kyle Shanahan. Forget the weapons, because Kenny Pickett's got weapons. It's the coaching that's the difference. Kyle Shanahan is a brilliant offensive head coach, particularly in the running game, but also in terms of the fact that it feels like every quarterback that's there succeeds in Kyle Shanahan's system. Any competent quarterback at the very least. Kenny Pickett's competent. He's yet to show us signs that he's just awful, just you can't play him. I mean, he's not to throw any shade to anybody, but Nathan Peterman, remember that start he made all those years ago for the Buffalo Bills? And it was like, guy, he threw like 5 picks in the first half. Like, okay, this guy's not the man. That's not the case with Kenny Pickett. He's a solid arm. He's accurate, although that could improve, but he's mobile. You saw the one play he made to George Pickens, stood in the pocket, made a tough throw, took a big hit. George Pickens took that 71 yards to the house. Again, speaking of George Pickens, you got George Pickens, you got Najee Harris, you got Jalen Warren who made some plays on Monday Night Football. You got that one kid, Austin, who's really shifty, nice player. Deontay Johnson's out due to injury. When he comes back, he's a big-time playmaker for you. I remember once he had a 3-touchdown game. You have Pat Freiermuth. You have the tight end, Washington, who you drafted out of Georgia. Offensive line isn't great, but that can be fixed. You can address that next offseason, maybe even at the trade deadline. Pittsburgh's offense isn't devoid of talent. It's not like they're New England, where it's kind of a bear cover. They got Zeke and Juju Smith-Schuster. Not a lot to work with. No, they've got Pro Bowl caliber players. Najee Harris is a 1,000-yard back. George Pickens has all the potential in the world from a physical standpoint to be a top 10 receiver, albeit dare I say top 5 receiver in the NFL. The problem is not the weapons. You could say, is it the quarterback? Maybe, but let's see once he gets some actual offensive coaching. If Mike Tomlin does, in fact, replace Matt Canada, which I hope and pray he does, and he gets an upgrade and Kenny Pickett still struggles, then it's a different conversation. Then it's probably the quarterback. And then you move on. And Pittsburgh is one of the most well-run organizations of the league, whether they trade for a quarterback, whether they pick one up in the draft. I mean, they've obviously had their fair share of successes at successful guys at that position. You could replace Kenny Pickett if he's not the guy. But let's be one. It's kind of what I talked about with Dak, that if you're not sure he's the guy in Dallas, put some good weapons around him, and Dallas to a certain extent kind of did that. The issue isn't the weapons in Pittsburgh, it's the play calling. I mean, here's my question, folks. What is that play call? 3rd down and 1. I want to make sure I'm getting this right, because the Pittsburgh got the ball back. So obviously Steelers, TJ Watt got that touchdown off the fumble recovery, and then Pittsburgh forced a 5-and-out for Cleveland. So if Cleveland punted, Pittsburgh's got the ball. How much time's left? 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Cleveland only has 2 timeouts, and Pittsburgh's at their own 25. So they're in a great position, a lot of field to work with to really burn some clock, make Cleveland take their timeouts. If you don't burn all the clock, maybe you give Cleveland the ball with, a minute left, maybe less, 30 seconds-ish. Here we go. Handoff Najee Harris, 1 yard. Handoff to Jalen Warren. He gets 8 yards. Okay, so you got a 3rd and short type of situation. They run an option play with Kenny Pickett on 3rd down 1. Not just any option play, ladies and gentlemen. A long, developing option play on 3rd down and 1. What are you doing? What is the objective? What are you hoping to accomplish, given the fact that Cleveland's going to stack the box? Cleveland's going to have guys who account for your running backs. They're going to have guys to account for Kenny Pickett, who we know can move. It's a predictable play call. It completely lacks creativity, and it completely lacks this, situational awareness. And so that's, as a new Steelers fan, and it's great for my first win as a Steelers fan to come against Cleveland of all cities. It's beautiful. More on the Browns in a moment. it's frustrating to watch because everybody in America knows how good Pittsburgh's defense is. That we don't have to talk about that. TJ's a monster. Alex Highsmith is amazing. They gave him a contract, this offseason. Well-deserved. They've got great interior linemen. Cam Hayward will be back eventually. Good linebackers. With Minkah Fitzpatrick healthy, you got a good secondary, albeit Fitzpatrick might be out for a little bit. Joey Porter made some plays the other night. Pittsburgh's defense is stacked. We knew that. Top 3 level defense potentially going into the season. Offensively, this is part of the reason I had them winning 11 games and winning a playoff game. George Pickens is a monster. We see that time and time and time again if you can just get the ball in his hands. Najee Harris, 1,000-yard back. Jalen Warren, explosive. The kid Austin, the wide receiver, explosive. Pat Freiermuth, good possession tight end. Like, aside from offensive line and maybe quarterback, again, I haven't seen enough to really know. Play calling's the issue. Again, we'll put this up one more time, put this graphic up one more time, then we'll move on. But here's the Steelers offensively under Matt Canada through 37 games. 26th in points per game, 26th in yards per game, 31st in yards per play, 29th in big plays, 31st in offensive touchdowns. Only 10 20-point games in regulation. This past game was the 10th, but that's because of the defense scoring 2 touchdowns. 2 30-point games in regulation, and not a single 400-yard game through a little over 2 years of Matt Canada, and every other team in the NFL has had at least 3. He's not the guy. So it is, man, it's frustrating to watch. I'm not going to lie to you. It is really frustrating to watch, seeing this offensive talent just completely go to waste. I love Mike Tomlin. Love Mike Tomlin. It's part of the reason I became a Steelers fan is because of my respect for the fact that, obviously, the man has never had a losing season. God bless him. He's done a marvelous job in Pittsburgh. He's a first-ballot Hall of Fame head coach. But at what point is he going to look at this offense? Again, Mike Tomlin's a defensive coach, so he's going to specialize in defense. That he has. Special that defense is, as Yoda would say, right? He can't not see the offense, see the issues there, be like, yeah, that works. I mean, it was so bad that in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you had one of the most respected, I don't use this word much, but classiest fan bases in American sports. The Nick Chubb injury, which was gutting, it was awful. Nick Chubb's being carted off the field. Pittsburgh fans are chanting, Chubb, Chubb, Chubb. Like cheering him on, like, man, we don't like your team. We're rooting against you, when you're playing. But, man, we don't ever want to see you go down, especially with the severity of the injury. Like, God bless you. We're rooting for you. That fan base, after the aforementioned Kenny Pickett option play, the whole stadium's chanting, Fire Canada, Fire Canada. Pittsburgh, not Philadelphia, who's booing after one half decent first quarter. I don't know what Pittsburgh has seen just for stability purposes, but sometimes, and that's why I love Pittsburgh, is because there's so much stability and there's such a great culture. But sometimes having, I shouldn't say too much stability, too much loyalty can cost you. I mean, look what we're seeing with Portland and Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard waited all this time, waited 11 years. Hey, Portland's going to get it right. No, they're not. Portland doesn't have the assets to put together a championship team. Dame, leave. You don't have to be loyal. And finally, Dame saw the light and was like, you know what? I probably can't win here. And there's obviously complications regarding his potential trade to Miami or whoever else is going to trade for him. But you get the point. Loyalty's great to a fault. Pittsburgh, at least I hope, I shouldn't say Pittsburgh, the Steelers organization, hopefully, will be coming to that conclusion relatively soon. Now, something else too, and then we'll move on to Cleveland. Obviously, feel free to chime in the comments section. Pittsburgh's next 2 games are against the Las Vegas Raiders and the Houston Texans. So Vegas' defense is awful, has been for, forever, for the last decade. And Houston, while improving, is still rebuilding, and Pittsburgh's a 4-point road favorite. If this offense struggles against either or, God forbid, both, I don't know how Matt Canada keeps his job going into the Baltimore game in Week 5. I don't. So, this isn't, I'm not just if it's not going wrong, fire the coach. Or if it's not going well, fire the coach. But we have a large sample size, 37 games. Think of all the crazy stuff that's happened in the NFL and in the world in the last 2 years, basically. Nothing's changed. Steelers' offense is bad. Steelers offensive play calling, rather, is bad. They have the playmakers. They just don't utilize them. That's the frustrating part as a Steelers fan. I'm not going to lie to you. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.